Welcome to Witnesses in Training, and today we're talking about boundaries and our comfort zones. We all have various reasons that hold us back from being witnesses of Jesus in everyday life, and one of the boundaries that we face is our desire for comfort. Our desire for comfort holds us back and hinders us from making those meaningful conversations and connections with the people around us. Now, we really cling to comfort. That's just within our nature. And yet, what does Jesus say about how we manage our desire for comfort? Well, in Luke chapter 9, Jesus says to his disciples, "Whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. For what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses or forfeits himself?" Jesus is calling us to consider that if we're trying to grab hold of life and take control of it for ourselves and try to hold on to what we want, we're actually going to lose that life. And yet, if we give up our lives to God, saying, "Jesus, you are Lord, be Lord of my life, every part of it," then we have a life that is secure in His hands. Secondly, Jesus calls us to count the cost. He says to His followers, "So therefore, any of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple." That's in Luke 14:33. So Jesus is calling His followers, if you want to follow Him and be a Christian, you must renounce all you have and say, "Jesus, this I give to you with an open hand. Be the Lord of all of my life." And that means for our plans, our priorities, our comfort, we give that up to Jesus. The third thing is that we're called to rejoice. Now, we give up our plans, our lives, our comfort to Jesus, and yet we have great joy. We have great joy when we share the gospel with others. And we see this when Paul, the Apostle Paul, is in prison and he's writing to the Christians in Philippi. And he says, rejoice. He calls the church to rejoice, and he's in prison. And he says, why? Because he says, "I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. And most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word without fear." Paul was rejoicing because he'd given up his comforts to Jesus, and he'd gone out of his comfort zone to speak the good news of Jesus to others, and yet he gets imprisoned because of this. People are persecuting him, and yet this gives other people confidence to share their faith as well. And he rejoices through all this because the gospel is good news worth sharing. And when more people hear about the good news of Jesus, more people receive His forgiveness and His freedom. Christ gives us comfort for our souls. We give up our worldly comforts, and Jesus gives us a deep comfort in our souls. And we can remember this from Philippians chapter 4, verse 11 to 13. The Apostle Paul says, "I have learned in whatever situation I am in to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." This is an amazing truth that we find in the Bible, that Paul finds this hope beyond all circumstances, that find contentment and joy in Jesus Christ. This is what gives him hope and security, comfort for his soul, is that whatever situation he's in the hands of God. He's been reconciled to the Father through Jesus Christ, and so he can boldly walk forth as a witness. Lastly, we can remember that Jesus Christ Himself left the comforts of heaven to come into this broken world, to face the rejection that we have for Him, to be pierced with our pain, to be filled with our sorrows. He left his comforts so that we could be reconciled to him, to the Father, that we could be received. He was rejected so that we could be received, and that we could be comforted in divine arms. So I pray for you, and would you pray for each other, that you would be able to let go of this grip of comfort, give it to God, trust him in his leading for your life, and that you would be able to share this good news for all people.